Have you heard the story of how the nephew of a very powerful politician in Nigeria got stabbed to death with a perfume bottle? This is the tragic tale of Bilyaminu Bello. The story begins in a very luxurious area in Abuja called Maitama. On this particular night, Bilyaminu and his wife Maryam, who also came from a very rich family, were together in their apartment when a friend of Aminu came to visit. His name is Ibrahim. When Ibrahim arrived, he and Bilyaminu were seated in the parlor, gisting, laughing and smoking shisha, just like normal friends would do. They were doing this for close to 15 minutes when Maryam came down from upstairs and called Bilyaminu. She sounded very urgent and Bilyaminu was forced to join her upstairs. But things got weird after a few minutes when Ibrahim was sitting down in the parlor and he started to hear sound of the couple fighting. He was hearing this sound, but he thought to himself, this is none of my business, this is probably a couple's fight and they will soon be done with it. But this fight did not stop nor slow down. They were fighting and quarreling for close to 15 to 20 minutes and Ibrahim got concerned. And so he went up there to see if he could settle the issue and stop the commotion. When Ibrahim got upstairs, he saw Bilyaminu and Maryam choking each other by the neck. And immediately he ran to them and told them, what are you guys doing? Stop this immediately. Your husband and wife, what is the issue? And immediately Maryam told Ibrahim to tell his friend to give her a divorce immediately. Divorce? How? Ibrahim was shocked. And so he asked his friend Bilyaminu, what's going on? Bilyaminu was very quiet. He asked Maryam, what's actually happening? Maryam didn't want to hear anything else. All she was saying over and over again was, tell your friend to divorce me right now or I will show you guys something that you've never seen before. Ibrahim saw that she was very serious and her eyes were red. So all he wanted to do at that moment was to separate them from each other and see if he could reason with each of them separately. But this was not going to happen because Maryam was bent on getting what she wanted that night. Ibrahim saw that this woman was not about to slow down or let go of Bilyaminu. So he pried her hands away from Bilyaminu's neck and immediately she got freed from him. She ran to the shelf, grabbed a bottle, broke it on the wall and plunged back to Bilyaminu to stab him with it. But Ibrahim was there, thankfully. He grabbed her hand and took the bottle away from her. Quickly, Ibrahim told Bilyaminu to go downstairs and leave the particular room where Maryam was hysterically, angrily trying to kill him in. And that was what he did. He went downstairs and while he was downstairs, Ibrahim was trying to talk some sense into Maryam. But Maryam wasn't listening to him. All that Maryam was repeating over and over again was, tell your friend to give me divorce this night. She even threatened that she will cut off his manhood if he doesn't divorce her. Mind you, while all of this was happening, it would be nice to mention that Maryam was pregnant. It wasn't clear what happened after that, but Bilyaminu came back into the room where Maryam was shouting and raking. And immediately Maryam saw him, she ran after him, trying to drag him, but Ibrahim was able to hold her back, but not for long enough. She freed herself and she went straight to Bilyaminu. While she was trying to hit him, Bilyaminu was still very quiet. He was trying to calm things down. She hit him and it was said that it got to a point where Bilyaminu began to hit her back. So they were hitting each other at this point. Bilyaminu later pushed her on top of the bed and ran downstairs, trying to avoid her. But before Ibrahim could hold her back, Maryam quickly followed Bilyaminu downstairs. She was going to the kitchen to grab a knife. When she took this knife from the kitchen, she ran straight to Bilyaminu to stab him with it. But Ibrahim luckily was there to grab the knife away from her hand. But once he collected the knife from her, she ran straight to the dining table where there was a table knife for cutting bread. She picked up that knife and ran again straight to her husband. But Ibrahim was able to collect this knife from her. Personally, the question I'm asking is, why was Bilyaminu still in that house? If I were to be the one, I would have left the house and avoided this problem. But let's continue the story. It was said that within that night, Maryam picked up about 3 different knives on 3 different occasions, trying to stab Bilyaminu with it, and Bilyaminu was complacent. When I say complacent, I don't mean he wanted to be stabbed. but he wasn't fighting it as much either. Anyway, the matter got only worse because it was said that Bilyaminu suffered minor cuts on his body and he even had his finger beaten by his wife Maryam. And while all of this was happening, Ibrahim was able to grab the phone and call the uncle and cousin of Bilyaminu to come and see what is going on in the house. When the uncle arrived, it seemed like things were becoming calm. He was able to talk to both of them and he was able to calm Maryam down. He told them that they should let go of the thing that is causing this issue, whatever it was, and that they should have peace for tonight. By tomorrow, they can begin to resolve the issue. And Maryam seemed to listen to him. When it seemed like everything was quiet, Bilyaminu and Ibrahim left the house to get his wounds treated. They went to the clinic, and while he was getting his wound patched up, they talked about fixing Maryam's car, which they later went ahead to withdraw money for. The both of them were said to have returned home that night around 11 p.m. and it seemed everywhere was quiet. Bilyaminu said that he wouldn't join her in the bed until she was asleep for his own safety. So all of them were together downstairs while Maryam was upstairs. When I say all of them, I mean Bilyaminu, Ibrahim, the uncle and the cousin. They were downstairs discussing and they stayed there until 1 a.m. in the morning, after which they left the couple's residence. Bilyaminu personally escorted them to the gates. But few minutes later, they received a call to come to Maitama Hospital that Bilyaminu was stabbed to death. In shock, they all ran to the hospital, and when they got there, they were shocked to see the wounds on Bilyaminu's body. There was a stab wound on his chest and on his thigh, and there was a very dirty bite wound on his stomach. Maryam had killed her husband. This thing was very heartbreaking for all of them, but they had to do the needful at the same time. Immediately, they took his body to the mortuary and went to the police station to file an official report. However, on the way to the police station, Maryam and her mother and her brother, with one policeman, stopped along the way to go home for some reason. Something was off about this particular diversion from the police station. The policeman that followed them to the house reported that they didn't let him go into the compound. They said he should wait at the gates while they went inside to do something that they did not disclose to him. Things are getting interesting now, because when they were at the hospital, Maryam admitted to stabbing her husband to death. But when she was told to write a police statement, she said that she wasn't the one that killed him. Remember when I told you that Bilyaminu came from a very influential family? Well, he was the nephew of Alhaji Habiru Bello, a one-time PDP chairman. For those of you who don't know, PDP is one of the most powerful political parties here in Nigeria. Let me give you a little bit of backstory to who Maryam really is. Maryam's mother is a very powerful name when you mention ASO savings in Nigeria. So they had money as well. But Maryam was very different. Bilyaminu was already married when Maryam came into the picture, and Maryam forcefully, violently forced him to divorce his first wife and marry her. So she basically forced her way into Bilyaminu's life. Apart from that, Maryam was breastfeeding a 3-month-old baby, and she was pregnant for another baby while she was this violent and this angry. Until now, we do not know the real reason why that fight started that particular night. But let's keep going. The story gets more interesting. People who knew the couple said that Bilyaminu doesn't talk and he doesn't stress. But he was like a prisoner in this particular marriage. He wasn't free to do anything or go anywhere. Whenever he went out with his friends who were boys, she would call him to come home after 20-30 minutes. And as a result of this, all his friends stopped visiting him outside. Rather, they came to his house whenever they wanted to see him. That was the kind of marriage that this man put himself into. And people who were close to the couple said that this is not the first time that this particular kind of fight has happened, and it's always emanated from Maryam. Immediately they brought this case in front of a judge. The judge immediately instructed detectives to go to the residence to see if they could find a clue that would paint a picture on what really happened that night. But when the police arrived, something very strange is what they met. You know, when things like this happen, the entire house is considered a crime scene and nobody is meant to touch or go into the particular room where the thing that happened. But in this case, When the police and family members arrived at the house, they met a very sparkling clean house. No blood on the floor, even if every other evidence suggested that there should be some blood on the ground. No sign of the murder weapon, even if all the evidence shown suggests that there is a murder weapon. And the furniture has been moved from where it was. It is no more in the position where it usually is. You could tell from the mark on the floor. And now in a separate room, flower vases and couches were torn, ripped apart and broken in a separate room, trying to paint a picture that, oh, it did not happen in this room. This was where it happened. But the police knew otherwise. It was so clear that the evidence has been tampered with. This incident had just happened yesterday. It's not possible that everything would have been cleaned up and swept so neatly, except someone did something. Now we understand the reason for the diversion that Maryam and her mother and brother made on the way to the police station, and also the reason why they refused the policeman to go into the building with them. They went into that house and they took away every evidence that would prove that Maryam actually killed her husband, and then they planted their own evidence in order to corroborate his story, which says that Maryam was the victim. Oh, but the police wasn't having any of this nonsense. They arrested everybody. The mother, the brother, Maryam, the house, everybody in the house was arrested for questioning. Maryam was charged to court for the murder of her husband, while everyone else involved were charged with tampering with evidence. They were all arraigned in court 5 days after the death of Bilyaminu, and this was just the beginning of a long and rigorous string of court hearings that would last over 2 years for the conclusion to be met. Within these 2 years, Maryam had given birth to the baby that was in her womb while she killed Bilyaminu, and the other people who were also arrested alongside her, her mom and her brother and house help, they were allowed to go home. They were released on bail, but the judge vehemently refused for Maryam to go home on bail. See, a lot of crazy things happened during these 2 years. Witnesses were disappearing. Lawyers that were supposed to fight for Maryam were withdrawing from the case. It was just a shambles. But in January 2019, Maryam took the stand and she testified. But what she said will blow your mind. Okay, listen, this is what she said. She said that on that particular night, she took her husband's phone so that she can make a call. But when she opened the phone, she saw the naked pictures of another lady. And so she confronted her husband about the pictures that she found in his phone. She said that this confrontation was what led to an argument, and this argument pushed until 11 p.m. when she said that Bilyaminu and her settled the issue. And she was going downstairs to pick her charger when Bilyaminu attacked her, and in the process fell the shisha bottle down from the table, and while she was trying to save herself from him during the struggle, he fell on the shisha bottle. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. She even went ahead to say that she tried to save his life and she tried to cover his wound with the scarf and all of that. But the housemaids in the house said that shisha bottle was intact the next morning. So if the shisha bottle was what broke and made Bilyaminu to lose his life, why was the same shisha bottle fixed and perfectly okay the next morning? Do you guys understand? Maryam also denied threatening to stab the husband or even making any advances to injure him, labeling both Ibrahim and every other person that testified against her as haters and people who want her downfall, saying that they were all lying and her testimony was the only truth. While she was saying all of this, the judge wasn't buying any of it. He knew that Maryam was lying, and he gave his verdict based on the rule of last seen, which says that the last person who was seen with the victim in a case of murder is the prime suspect. He sentenced Maryam to death by hanging, and this was her reaction.
Send her to death by hanging until she dies. This I have done, believing that
she tried a couple of times in different courts to try and overturn the death sentence, but tragically, it didn't work. No one was listening to her. And so I have a question for you. Do you think the judge's verdict was too harsh? or was it perfect for the crime that was committed? Let me know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.